Good evening, everyone. We're very glad to see and we welcome you into our series dedicated to language of corporate law. We are super happy that we can continue our series on legal English. And right now we have with you a truly star, a professor from United States, Dr. Lindsay Kurtz, who is going to be the teacher of this series. I'm going to speak about the logistics a little bit, and then we are going to turn to our presentation. So just wanted to remind you that this series will consist of 6 webinars are each having a place every 2 weeks on Wednesdays. This time, the time doesn't change. Our webinar lasts for 90 minutes, and during the webinar, you are very welcome to watch to answer the questions. To answer the questions, you need to join a presentation. We send you a link, plus you will be able to see a QR code, and you will be able to answer Lindsay's questions anonymously, which is great. And also, if you would like to ask the questions, you are very welcome to use different tools. You may write your comments on YouTube, Vkontakte, also in our chat in Telegram. You got the link to this chat. And I'm very glad to say hi to Lindsay. Hello, Lindsay.
Hello, Sophia. Good to see you.
I'm very, very happy to have you, and we are so honored that you are going to be conducting this series. Right now, I would like to introduce Lindsay, just read a short bio so we understand where she's from. So, Dr. Lindsay Kurtz has been teaching English for academic purposes since 2013, with primary in residence positions in law school in the United States and China during this time. In both her teaching and scholarship, Lindsay seeks to meet students where they are and to understand how concepts from linguistic theories can assist multilingual students in their study of US law. So, and Vygotsky sociocultural theory is central to Lindsay's approach, but she also draws from linguistic theories such as cognitive linguistics and corpus linguistics. Dr. Kurtz recently co-authored an English for academic purposes book drawing together Vygotsky sociocultural theory and genre-based writing pedagogies. She has previously taught English and lived in China, Japan, and Mexico, which is truly fantastic. And to us, Lindsay is going to expand on topic of the language of corporate law. So, and Lindsay, welcome, 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 and I give the floor to you.
All right, thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for that generous introduction. So today, yes, we'll be discussing the basics of English for corporate law. A lot of the topics that we raise today, we will actually dive more deeply into in webinars 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So today really is the basics. And I want to start us off by thinking about what might be a kind of perplexing question. So I want you for a second to put on your lawyer hats, right, to use an idiom. Generally, we think that there are many advantages to incorporation. And so, of course, when I say incorporation, I'm talking about the process that you would go through to constitute or create a company as a legal corporation. So if we think there are these advantages to incorporation, why do lawyers often advise their clients, when in doubt, do not incorporate? Well, think about, I would like to perhaps hear some theories or ideas you might have. If we think there are these advantages to incorporation, why might corporate lawyers advise clients who are thinking about starting a business and becoming a corporation, when in doubt, do not incorporate? What might be some reasons?
Mhm. So, as I understand, our audience can, via link, are that you can see on top of the screen, or also the link that was sent to you are together with the links to live broadcasting. Please join it, and you don't need to register. And so we will have our free question. Yes, Lindsay. So as usual, so as teachers, like, write what you think. Great. So.
Yeah, we're not starting off with an easy one, right? But
Yeah.
some of the themes, hopefully, that you might come up with. But liability, okay? Liability is a huge topic that we will only touch on today, but we'll get more into in future webinars. Very important.
And so I also have some answers that show up in our Telegram channel that I can also voice. And mhm. Also, Mariana says that to avoid having to deal with corporate law, which is great. And Alexei says that to cut costs.
Mhm.
Nikita says double taxation, which is very interesting.
Absolutely.
And we can see that someone else is, oh,
When there's no purpose, right? So there are specific reasons that there are advantages to incorporation, but maybe you have a business or an idea where that it would not apply those advantages. I will say on the double taxation, I don't plan to get too much into the tax structures. That is a, very complicated area of law, but it's important. Red tape, absolutely. It's complex and complicated, as we are going to see a little bit later when we talk about the structure. There are multiple stakeholders, multiple people who have a stake in and have a say in both the management and the ownership of a corporation. Okay, I don't see anybody. Oh, I see a couple more people typing. We'll take another answer or two.
And I also have some comments, a couple of more comments are in chat that Juliana says that too much documentation. And Anna says that being a sole entrepreneur is simpler than complying with all corporate requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a husband who runs his own business and he's a sole entrepreneur, and it would be unnecessarily cumbersome if you tried to incorporate. Let's see, many opinions. Yes, there's too many cooks in the kitchen sometimes.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you all. I think that you will see that definitely the themes and the ideas that you came up with we'll touch upon tonight and then in future webinars as well. So, continuing our idea of thinking through why we might choose to incorporate or not, I'd like us to think about first going back and thinking about, as an entrepreneur or as a business owner, choosing an organizational form. Because we have many options available to us in the US and I'm sure in Russia as well. And there are advantages and disadvantages to each. So if we imagine we have Bud and Beatrice, and they want to open a flower shop. And in this picture that lovely AI created for me, they're holding hands, but we don't have to assume they're married. Bud plans to provide the capital. He will provide the money and the financing for the business, and Beatrice will run the shop. And so based on this framing and the picture, it seems like it will be sort of a mom and pop kind of shop. But that doesn't necessarily have to be the case, right? We have absolutely in the United States nationwide flower shops that would look a little bit different than a sort of small mom and pop shop. The organizational form that they choose is going to determine their legal relationship, their financial rights, the responsibilities that each might individually hold for the debts of the business, and also tax liability. So we'll go briefly through a couple of the options that Bud and Beatrice have available to them. And then we'll move more explicitly and deeply into corporate law and corporations themselves. So, an example, and somebody actually mentioned this when they said it's sometimes easier to be a sole entrepreneur. So, one of the options is they could create the business as a sole proprietorship. So, for example, Bud would own the business as a sole proprietor, and Beatrice would be his employee, right? And so she isn't in the ownership structure at all, she's an employee. Or Bud could loan her the money and she's the sole proprietor, right? So he's now not in the ownership structure, it's just her. This type of business is typically small, modest capital needs. You don't need a lot of extra financing or backing. That can usually be met from the owner's own resources or from lenders that they are able to secure themselves. They might also choose to enter into a general partnership. So they just agree to carry on business and they will share control over the business and the day-to-day operations and the profits. This will automatically create a partnership. But one of the drawbacks then is each of them would individually be liable for partnership obligations. So if the flower shop could not, for example, meet some of its debt obligations or contractual obligations, like pay the people who actually bring the flowers to them, each of them would be individually responsible for meeting that debt. Yeah, I know I'm seeing the oh face. That's one of the drawbacks, right, of a general partnership. But there are some tax benefits to a general partnership. This kind of arrangement is prevalent in service industries. So, for example, law firms in the United States historically and even to this day have been general partnerships, but also accounting and medical firms where a high level of trust must exist among the participants, and capital needs are usually not that great in a lot of these industries, excuse me. Bud and Beatrice might also, and so now we're getting into sort of where we're mixing and matching some of the advantages and disadvantages of partnerships versus corporations. So they could enter into a limited partnership where a limited partner would provide capital and they're liable only to the extent of their investment. So they don't have to be general partners. So this sort of structure would differentiate limited partners from the kind of general partners and liability we talked about in the general partnership. So for example, Beatrice could be a general partner. So she would assume like the full responsibility, right, of being a general partner, but they could both be limited partners. And so then Bud, who's providing the financing, would be liable only to the extent of the money that he put in to the business. So this sort of structure would combine tax advantages and then limiting the liability. So for Bud, in that example, the limited partner, he's limited his liability. They might also form a very popular type of company for especially a lot of smaller family companies, a limited liability company, an LLC. So it's sort of a hybrid or a combination of it's a hybrid of a corporation and a partnership. So like a general partnership, the members of the LLC provide capital and they manage the business according to their agreements. Those members who have provided capital and they're managing the business, their interests in the business, so like ownership stakes, are generally not transferable.
Also it's corporation. So although it's a incorporated kind of form of business, yes?
Yeah. So it's a little bit more, it's limited, and I can't just say, well, now I'm going to give my interest or my stake in this company over to my husband. right? Whereas if I in a corporation, if I was a stock owner, a shareholder, I can sell my interest, right? I can transfer it to somebody else through a sale. Um, we'll talk about it later, but like some people in a corporation can't, right? Like a CEO can't say, if I'm the CEO of the Legal English Center, I can't say, oh, nope, Sophia, I'm transferring that responsibility to you, right? So some things are transferable and some things aren't.
Thank you.
And like a corporation, and this is why a lot of people form LLCs, is they're flexible, right? You can manage business according to your agreement, but under an LLC, you're not personally or individually liable for the debts of the LLC. So if I have a farm, that's an LLC, that's sort of separate from me personally and individually, and I can't lose my house because I can't pay for my tractor. Alrighty, they could also, Bud and Beatrice, form a corporation. And we'll continue to sort of circle around this idea, but basically, shareholders provide capital. They provide the money, the finance in a corporation, and separately, directors and officers manage the business. Importantly, corporate participants, so the shareholders, but the directors and officers are not personally liable for debts, only the corporation is. So we're sort of foreshadowing one of the ideas that we'll end with tonight, and that the corporation, all business organizations really, end up being independent legal personalities. We treat them as people for the purposes of law in some cases. And corporations, pardon.
Yeah, sorry, we have some, pardon so for interrupting you. We have some discussion right now in our chat on Telegram
Please.
where Alexei says, yes, it's a legal, separate legal person. So like someone is backing you up. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, and as we'll talk about actually in the US, corporations end up being a special type of legal person, and that unlike other business organizations, they actually have been held to have constitutional rights, like rights to due process, rights to equal protection under the law, and even rights to free speech.
A corporation, so like
Corporations.
as a resident of the United States.
Yes, yes. So we will get to that idea just because I find it so fascinating, and I think as lay people, we often find it quite controversial that corporations can have rights in this way.
Yeah.
Okay. There's not a question there.
You can just, I think you just need to have a start. Yes. Oh, okay. So, okay, get your device. Oh, here we need to join a game. Okay. So,
okay.
So, yeah, over here, everyone. So you need to enter your name, just any name. It can
Yeah,
be.
yeah, you can remain anonymous, like enter just any sort of name.
You can just end and just join a game. Yeah, we can see. Oh, so it's going to be a real play.
Yeah, yeah. So I had a little fun with AHA slides, and I tried different formats. And what it's going to do is ask you to match the type of business organization we just talked about with one of its key characteristics.
Okay, super. So, so everyone, we are so as you can see that throughout the whole series, we have been experimenting with different programs, and this is the one that we found. So, and it's some bits are new to us. We are waiting for someone else to join us. Yeah, and so let's have fun. So it's really gamification of our series, big time. Okay. All right. I think we can start.
Okay, let's start it. All right. Okay, and the faster you are, match each business form to its key feature.
Okay, so, oh, and it gives a limit of time, so really need to do it faster. Oh, so, Match with, you need to press the button. Okay, so that is very, very kind of, oh, I don't, so
Okay.
I'm also trying to do
Okay.
it, but it's so fast, yes.
Maybe
So
we won't do that type of question again.
we'll see.
We'll
No,
see.
I think it's super great. Yes, we will just need to set up next
A,
time more time.
a
Okay,
longer
everyone, we are
timer.
experimenting. Yeah,
Absolutely.
but that's okay. We have,
Absolutely.
yeah, but we
It
have
looks
two
like a
people who
couple
actually managed. Yeah.
to get them all right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're fast and smart.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, I think I have one more question related to Bud and Beatrice before we move on to a series of questions that we would actually ask as a corporate lawyer, somebody planning to start a business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I'm going to in the next slide have you consider and think about is based on our brief overview of these different types of business organizations. Oh no, sad faces.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe we can return and give them the answer so they're happy. Everyone, next time we'll organize it, big time. That's okay.
It,
So,
so can you not see the answers? Because the answers, like they reorganized themselves and they
oh,
were,
so that was reorganization. Okay.
yeah.
So, all right, then now we got it. Okay, so everyone,
Okay,
so
I'm sorry, guys.
that happens. So, yeah, okay, let's try it one more
Okay.
time.
Okay. Well, I don't think anyone's.
So, hmm so if anyone can try and answer, yeah. I think just next time we'll just get more time, maybe. We'll
I think
get,
so.
that's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, we'll
Once
just
I get
experiment.
better with AHA.
Hmm.
Okay, so now see they reorganized
Yeah.
themselves. So the
Yeah.
LLC has it's a hybrid of the corporation and the partnership in terms of liability and tax advantages. The limited partnership, as opposed to the general partnership, limits the liability for some partners who you designate. They're only going to be in for as much money as they provide. The general partnership offers shared control and profits, but joint liability.
Hmm.
The profit sharing that's often called like the pass-through income, right? But you are jointly liable for any debts of your partnership. And then sole proprietorship, it's you, single owner, and again, you're liable for the debts of your proprietorship. Okay.
Hmm.
All right. Sorry. I hope I got rid of some of the sad faces. And I'll give you some time to think, to put your lawyer hats back on, and think about if Bud and Beatrice came to you, what questions might you have for them in order to think about providing advice? Or maybe jump right to it and what type of business organization would you suggest for Bud and Beatrice? Okay, so that's the question that should be right here.
And let's put hide submissions. I think you can press the button, so maybe
There we
it's
go.
possible. Oh no, hide.
Oh,
Yes, you're right. So better maybe. No, no, no. Hide. Yes. Sorry, I thought that. Yeah. Can you please press the button? Yes, to close
press
the.
it again.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
There
So.
we go. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow. So we have people, okay,
Uh-huh.
couple votes for LLC, general partnership.
Hmm.
Do people in your chat have reasons that they're providing for these responses? I wish that I had a way to see or ask
Yeah.
why.
Let's ask because it takes some time to print it. So everyone, if you can please provide any reason why you've chosen this or that form of business, can you please just type it in, and we will then I will just voice them to everyone, okay? And I will just wait. So let me see, okay, because it takes some time to print.
Mhm.
There are so many options. There,
There
you
really
know,
are. And I only went through the, what the five most common and typical. There are even more hybrids that business owners have available to them these days. But definitely the corporation is the principal or the main option that people do choose.
Mhm,
That and a lot of LLCs.
mhm. Okay, for now I don't have any
Any
reasoning yet. I
reasons?
think,
Okay.
yeah, so but maybe they will show up. So I will
Okay.
oh,
So ask Beatrice, does she want to work in the company, right? Does she want to be an employee and have that guaranteed paycheck, no liability? Or does she want to have control and management of the business? That's an excellent question for Beatrice. Yeah, general partnership. It can really, and I love the use of that idiom, right? It can be kind of unfair when you have somebody, and sometimes colloquially, we call this sweat equity. When you're the one doing all of the work
mhm,
and building the business, like she would be the only one pulling all of the weight, right? If he just stuck money in and then did nothing. And then,
mhm.
yeah, what responsibility do you want to have? Because it's not just making profits, which are not guaranteed, it's also about responsibility. Excellent.
And we have Juliana who also submitted via Telegrams that it would be fair to share liability between the person who provides money and who
Mhm.
is the actual breadwinner.
Mhm. Yeah,
Mhm,
absolutely. And so then they just have to decide what kind of liability they're comfortable with.
mhm.
All righty. So it wants us to vote. I think I'm just going to move on because we have so many people who brainstormed the same thing.
Yeah, yes. Okay,
Okay.
super. That was actually
Okay.
very interesting.
Okay. Yeah, and I found it very interesting that we had a breadth, right? So not everybody agreed, oh, it should be an LLC or a corporation. Like we definitely had differences of opinions, as I think we would in if Bud and Beatrice actually wanted to open up a flower shop. So now, what we'll do to again just sort of get the overview and the lay of the land is go through five basic questions that a decision maker would need to have the answer to or need to think through carefully when choosing an organizational form. And what I've done is sort of on the next series of slides provided the why a corporation answer to each of these questions. So for now, or maybe forever, we'll leave general partnerships and LLCs behind, and now we're going to focus on the corporation itself. So anybody choosing an organizational form would need to consider five basic questions. So basically, a business organization is it's a vehicle for an investment, for pooling labor and pooling capital. And so we want to consider how long does this investment last? Because the answer is actually different depending on if you choose a general partnership or an LLC or a corporation. Who manages the investment? What is the return on investment? How can the investors get out? And what are the investors' responsibilities to others? And actually, as I'm, looking at these questions, these are sort of the overall topic of some of the future webinars that we have planned in this series. So, question one, when does the investment begin and end? So, as we've already established, a corporation becomes a distinct legal entity, so it has independent perpetual existence. So that's why, for example, Henry Ford, who started Ford Motor Company, died in like 1916, 1926, and we still have Ford Motor Company today, right? Because the corporation exists separately from natural persons. It is distinct from anyone who contributes capital. So in the case of a corporation, shareholders. and those who manage the business in the case of a corporation, directors and officers. The corporation itself owns business assets and is responsible for any business debts. So those people, the shareholders, the directors, and officers, are not responsible for any debts that the business has individually themselves. Question 2 that you would need to consider is who manages the investment? In a corporation, the locus or the focus, like the central place where power is focused, is the board of directors. This board often, but not always, perhaps in a smaller corporation, would delegate power to officers. And the officers can act for and bind the business and really do those day-to-day managing of the business. I have a couple more slides a little bit later on what these people actually do and what they're responsible for. Directors are subject to fiduciary duties. We'll have actually a whole webinar on, or at least a big chunk of a webinar on the rights and responsibilities or duties of directors. And so what that means for today is they are obligated to act in the best interest of the corporation, even if it's not necessarily in their own best interest. Shareholders have a limited governance role in a corporation. Basically, they have 2 things they can vote on that they do, but otherwise they provide money and they have ownership interests and they receive money back in the form of dividends. Question number 3 you need to consider. What is the return on investment? So as I just said, shareholders, they receive a sort of return in the form of dividends, but a corporation is going to establish a hierarchy to financial returns. Creditors are first in line and they receive a return based on the contracts. We'll talk about some of this when we get to the final webinar, which is insolvency procedures and how lawyers argue over and wrangle who is first in line, second in line, last in line for receiving any payout for what they are owed. Shareholders are last in line in terms of receiving a return on their investment, and they receive dividends as declared at the discretion of the board. But again, they have after they contribute their money, they have really no role in the governance or oversight of the day-to-day operations of the business. If the business dissolves, as we'll talk about, creditors have priority, and shareholders, they have a residual interest, they're residual claimants, and again, still, they will be last in line. Okay. Question 4 we need to consider. How can investors get out? We touched upon this briefly earlier. If you're a shareholder, your ownership interest, your shares are freely transferable. You can sell to other investors who are interested in your shares, right? So that's how I can go into my portfolio and, I'm not feeling Exelon today, so I'll sell some shares. So that's how the shareholders can get out. Managers, so the directors and officers, they can't transfer their positions, but they can resign, right? So again, I can't just say, I'm the CEO, Sophia, you're now the CEO. I have to resign. And then as we'll talk about in a little bit, the board would have to vote on a new officer. Okay, and what are the investors' responsibilities to others? A corporation is liable for its own obligations, but otherwise, and this is one of the reasons people choose corporations, creates a non-recourse structure. So corporate insiders, so the directors, the officers, the shareholders, are not personally liable to outsiders on corporate obligations. So if you don't like your MacBook or if your MacBook catches on fire, you can't personally sue the CEO of Apple because the CEO of Apple is not personally liable to you for that malfunction of that device. And outsiders, so if I'm a tort victim, my MacBook, just thinking about it because I'm looking at mine, were to catch on fire and I would be burned, I would be a tort victim. I do bear the risk of Apple not having enough money, right, of corporate insolvency. Contract creditors also would bear this risk. And like corporate investors and managers, risk only. I can't read the last point there. I am so sorry. Yeah, that's what I
Risk
thought.
only, yeah, their
Their
investment.
investment. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, we have got a couple of questions. So
Okay.
basically,
Excellent. That's
yeah,
a great spot.
yeah. So, well, some of them are like about the vocabulary, and some about the more structural issues. Let's put it this way. So, the first question is: Are to one person? It's not unclear. What is the difference between director and officer? Like,
Okay. So I will see that in a little bit. But so a board of directors is mandated by statute. So to have when you establish your corporation, it's under a statute, and all statutes mandate you have a board of directors, right? So
mhm,
directors are mandatory, and they oversee sort of like the big picture things, the really big picture things.
mhm,
Officers are actually, I think, what we really oftentimes, at least in the US, think of. So the board of directors can delegate some of their management and oversight governance to officers. So when you think of officers, think CEO,
mhm,
CFO, vice presidents, the people who are doing the running of the company.
mhm.
But the
Okay.
directors are mandated by statute. The officers are not necessarily mandated by statute.
Then there is a second question. Can one person, maybe we'll speak about it, can one person incorporate a corporation? And if this person can do it, what's going on with the structure? So like director being also the officer and so on. So
So, not a lawyer, a legal English professor.
yeah,
Um,
sorry.
but and what I can do is I can look that up.
Uh-huh.
But my guess is the answer is no,
Hmm.
because one of the reasons you choose a corporation is they're emblematic of the separation of ownership interest and control.
Hmm.
And so if
Okay.
it's one person, you can't really have the separation, right?
Yeah, so then we can just discuss it next time. So we
Mhm.
are anyway going to speak about it. Yeah. And there was another question. So the last one. So that would be maybe too lawyerish from Yulia. Um, what about sharing of profits issue between investors or between the persons who are going to run the business? So are that is kind of I mean, I
I
understand that about this number five. Yeah, that's very so Julia, we are yes, we're again maybe it's very lawyerish thing.
And actually, I imagine we might get into that. I'm still planning webinar too,
Mm-hmm.
but we're talking about how you incorporate in webinar
Yeah.
two. And one of those um, issues would be writing your charter,
Mm-hmm.
and you would make decisions about profit sharing in writing your charter.
Mm-hmm.
How many shares are you going to have? Who's going to have what percentage of those shares? What kinds of shares are they going to be?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because we often think about just these publicly offered companies, but the kind of shares I can buy are not necessarily the same that the CEO of Apple has access to, right?
Yes.
So I think, was that Yulia?
Yes.
I
Mm-hmm.
think that actually, even though I'm not a lawyer, we'll get into that a little bit in webinar two.
Mhm. And there is also one more question from Alexei. I think we will also, Alexei, answer it during the next webinar about incorporation, because the question is, can legal person be a director? We will also
Oh,
discuss it. Yeah, that's
yeah.
interesting.
So legal person as opposed to natural person.
Yes. So can legal person be running a company and be a director? I think it's everyone was impressed by you saying that the company has rights as a person.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's very interesting, right? Are business organizations legal entities in the same way in Russia? Are they legal persons?
They are similar, but we have limited liability company, which is very, very popular form of business.
Hmm.
But it is different from LLC that you have been discussing. So, and
Hmm.
that's why I think it's very interesting for everyone, because we usually translate um, a lot of things differently. That's why
Hmm.
it's the series is super important for us to understand the structural differences.
Okay.
And well, yes, and Alexei asked, like, legal entity. Can legal entity be a director? I think we can answer this question just next time about
Yeah.
incorporation policy.
Sophia, can you do me a huge favor and keep track of all of the things I'm
Yeah.
supposed to
Mhm.
answer next time?
Yeah, yeah. So I will kind of so, and I will
Okay.
just make a list for you, and we will if there are any more questions, please write them, because it will be easier for Lindsay to actually know, like, and maybe to explore something and include it into the webinar.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, I can't see you. I can only interact with you through Sophia. So please, if you can do that, that will help me know who I'm actually speaking to and better deliver something that's interesting and useful for you.
super.
I feel like the answer to that last question is going to involve shell companies or something, but we'll find out.
Super. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we are now halfway into our first webinar, and we're finally going to get to a definition of corporate law. So generally, right, the laws of business organizations provide the rules and principles that govern the internal affairs of that entity. So internal, like how it's structured and how people within the business organization interact with each other and the rights and obligations they have individually and to each other. Corporate law focuses on the relationship between shareholders and managers, the two constituent groups understood to comprise the internal organization of the company, which we're going to look at in the next couple of slides. But the question is, what about issues involving customers, employees, creditors, etc.? Well, we've already sort of been talking about it. I'm actually, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip forward. Okay, no, I'm still going to skip forward. So because the corporation is a legal personality, it can be subject to other areas of law, contract law, tort law, antitrust law, labor law. So the claims or issues that people outside of the corporation might have with the corporation can be resolved through legal norms in those areas. Okay, now we can get to corporate constituents. So, as we sort of were just alluding to, we have corporate insiders, we have corporate outsiders. Corporate outsiders are really going to largely go away for a lot of our time together. They're the creditors, people the corporation owes money to, suppliers, and maybe the community or society at large, right? Corporate insiders are the focus of corporate law, and they're shareholders, directors, and officers. And their relationships look a little bit like this. So I sometimes use investor and shareholder interchangeably. Um, they're the money people. They have an ownership interest. It's most common that they are passive investors. So they're just sort of funneling money, either big chunks of money or little chunks of money at a time. And when I say they're a diffuse group, there's sometimes a lot of them. Sometimes they have, or oftentimes they have, little to no interaction with each other or overlap in interests, especially when we're talking about publicly traded companies, right? So if I have Apple stock, millions of people have Apple stock, right? So we're a very diffuse group. Investors typically have two roles. They vote on the board of directors and they vote on amendments to the charter. And that's their governance, role. The board of directors, as voted on by the investors, is required by statute. So I think that gets to that separation, and can the one person be a corporation? They're really managing the business affairs of the corporation. And they can select officers. And officers are, I think, who we oftentimes think of in terms of corporations, right? So we think of the CEO of Nike or the CEO of Apple. The chief financial officer is going to oversee the finances, the money aspects of the company. Vice presidents might be an officer that a board of director could delegate really a lot of the day-to-day runnings of a business, of a department to. So Google, for example, has lots of different different departments, different projects and things that they're working on. And so the vice president would be an officer of, say, their cloud strategies, and a secretary. Sometimes this is their general counsel, the lawyer for the head lawyer for the company.
That was a
So,
question. Yeah, that was a question, sorry, that I had in our in one of the comments about like why secretary. So because it sounded like a person who
it sounds
meets
like the
with
office
people.
assistant, right?
Yes. So
Yes.
and now you said that it is something different. So secretary of a corporation is not the secretary who brings the coffee. Yes.
No,
So.
correct. I think
Mhm.
that is, yeah, a holdover, maybe like old-fashioned sort of language, right? But yeah, oftentimes, especially in smaller corporations, your secretary might actually be your general counsel, and they're keeping track of legal aspects and compliance aspects of the business.
And I have one more question.
Mhm.
So I have two people who actually wrote personally to, well, they could have Googled it, but that's okay. We'll explain. What does it mean, constituents? Can you please
Um,
explain? Yeah, because for many, that is a new word, an unusual word.
the people who make up the corporation.
Okay.
Yeah, the people who make up the corporation, and the people that we're concerned with in corporate law, right? Because employees would also make up the corporation, but they're not part of the corporate structure that we're worried about in corporate law, because they're subject to labor laws in different areas of law. But yeah, the people who make up the corporation.
Super. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, and then this is really just trying to point out that, again, the corporation and why people often choose to incorporate is we have this divide between ownership and control. And investors have an ownership interest through their ownership of shares, right? So it's not like they personally own assets or property of the corporation. You can't walk into Apple if you have Apple stock and like take a couch or something. That's not yours. You have an ownership interest through your ownership of shares. And this is just because I couldn't create a better image, but this imagistically is what the last slide was trying to represent. You have the investors who vote on the board of directors, and then the directors can be appointed by the board of directors as subordinate managers.
Mhm.
Okay.
Super.
And I tried I have to just admit as an aside, I tried for hours to have AI create something that like was as clear as this, and it couldn't. So I just thank you, Bauman et al. Okay, so in summary, the main attributes or characteristics of a corporation are the separate and perpetual legal personality, right? It's a distinct legal person that is going to carry on even when individual natural people die. Centralized management under a board structure, that board of directors that's required by statute. Shared ownership interests tied to residual earnings and assets. Transferability of ownership interests, right? So I can buy and sell stock as a shareholder, and limited liability for the participants, right? So the CEO is not individually liable to tort victims or to creditors. Excuse me. Okay. Now we get to talk about, unless there are questions. Are there questions?
No, not yet. So I think it's a lot to think.
I
So
know it is a lot to think about, but I think so. The good news is today is really the overview of each of these things we're going to get into in greater detail, right? So we just sort of want to take this picture and we're going to be doing a deep dive into what this actually means in terms of each of these constituents, each of these people's rights and their responsibilities, and how it actually looks in real life. We're going to be doing a deep dive in that throughout the next 5 webinars.
excellent. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
But please, if you have questions, ask, and there will be time at the end to ask as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm so glad that you all have been interested in this idea of the legal personhood of a corporation. Because yes, all business entities are legal persons, separate and distinct from their equity holders. So the people who have ownership stakes, the people who have vested interest in the business and business entity or corporation. But this, of course, is what we call a legal fiction. And it arose as a way so businesses can do things like enter into contracts, own and sell property, sue and be sued, and do all the other things that are necessary to conduct business. Because if individual people had to do that and you had to have every individual person on a contract, that would be unnecessarily cumbersome. So if you can have the one entity that can do it expeditiously, efficiently, that's better for business. And I know sometimes lawyers don't like to hear that, but sometimes we do things because it's better for business. It also allows the company to be sued, right? Instead of the individuals who comprise the company. So it protects or removes liability as well. And then the legal personhood of a corporation is not the only legal fiction that we have, but a legal fiction is just an acceptance, an assumption of something, an acceptance of it as fact, even though it's not actually true. And we do this in order for a rule to be applied, in order for the corporation to be able to be sued, in order for the corporation to be able to enter into a contract, for example.
And let's see, there's a question, small one, but that have just was been submitted by Olga. She says, which expression is more widely used or popular in the United States, legal person or legal entity? Mm-hmm. Or it doesn't matter.
I don't think it matters that. And actually, I did.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because I looked that up. I think actually legal person or legal personhood, or to be confusing, legal personality, would be more common than legal entity in terms of what we're talking about. When I was trying to anticipate that question and look it up, the business law terms dictionary also gave me the term artificial person.
Okay.
So I think legal person or legal personality would be most common, just off the top of my head. But you know what? You know what I can do? Make another note. I will consult a corpus of American law decisions, and I will see legal entity versus legal personhood and what actually is more common.
And just also, we have quite interesting, small, very small, just now started discussion in our Telegram channel as well, Telegram group. So, because Alexei was asking, may a legal entity be liable for a criminal action? And Juliana has answered. So, unlike the USA, so in USA it's not possible. Legal entities in Russia can, oh, it's vice versa. So unlike the USA, legal entities in Russia can never be subject to criminal liability. If something goes wrong, there must be somebody to blame, merely a person who was in charge for particular corporate tasks, for example, accountancy. So it means that, thank you very much, Juliana, for specifying this. So we will also see whether a legal entity can be liable for criminal action. And as I understand in US, yeah, it's possible. So, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I and I was also thinking about this, and I can add that to my list. And maybe
Yeah,
Yulia is right,
yeah.
right?
Yes, and
But
Juliana, thank you so much for
yeah,
answering this because it was kind of interesting thing. So, and
and
again, I
so
think
yeah,
let's see,
yeah. So
returning
you
to your idea about the legal corporation as a
yeah,
like
it's
the rest.
it is it's interesting, right? And this, oftentimes we think about when you in criminal law you punish through oftentimes prison or like imprisonment, right? You can't do that with a corporation, but we can also punish through fines,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so when we talk about like the natural people and the um, legal person, right? So the corporation, I guess, could be held criminally liable, but if an individual person committed a crime, they can individually be held criminally liable for their personal actions, is my understanding. And actually, that foreshadows a little bit an idea in one of the cases that we'll get to in a couple slides.
Yeah. And thank you very much, Juliana, for actually answering this question in our
Yeah,
chat.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I have a question I'm glad that I have this question because you seem interested in it. This looks like yes or no. But also if you have
Oh, and
like
let's yeah. And Lindsay, let's maybe close the eye so we don't see all of the yeah. So we will see the
perfect
answers after
in a
the
little bit.
oh
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Sounds
a
good.
little bit. So yeah, yes. So and yes, the question is, does legal personhood of business entities make sense? So you just need to press the button in the
Mhm.
presentation. And and while we are waiting for everyone to
Mhm.
join and to submit their answers, there is continuation of this discussion actually, Lindsay, in our chat.
Good.
I might give you the access to it, although I think that you will be overwhelmed just looking everywhere. So Mariana says, continuing talking about criminal a legal entity being liable for criminal action, Marianda says that I feel like it's something you see on the news all the time. So, for example, these and these and suing Apple, Google, and so on. Those are constantly some are
So,
news.
but
uh,
but
mhm.
that's civil liability, right? Criminal liability in the US would be the state.
Uh-huh.
So
Oh,
either the federal government or an individual state would have to prosecute a company for doing something wrong, right? So at
mhm.
least in the US, criminal law is the is the state versus the person. And
Mhm.
civil law in the US is individual wrongs. But yeah,
Okay.
no, people sue companies all the time.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying this. Great.
But I'll actually, I mean, I'll look into this more since we're
Yeah,
interested in
I
it.
will make a list of
Yeah.
everything. So it's great because it gives us also some understanding. Okay.
No room for discussion. It makes sense. And I think it does. There are absolutely, as we'll see in a couple of slides, some US Supreme Court decisions that are controversial in the United States, because lay people don't understand all of the actual reasons that legal personhood does make sense, right? It helps you conduct business. And it also shields some people from personal liability. But maybe it's gone too far if corporations have First Amendment rights and the kinds of First Amendment protections they have. We'll see. Okay, so a corporation is not just a legal person, it's become a constitutional person. So this takes legal personhood even a step farther. So constitutional jurisprudence, which is just a way of saying US Supreme Court case law, has established that corporations have certain constitutional rights. And so the earliest cases we have addressing this are way back in the 1800s, 1886 and 1888. For some reason, they both involve, well, it makes sense if you think about the history. They both involve railroads and fences. But essentially what they do is they establish first that corporations are persons under the 14th Amendment and are thus entitled to equal protection under the law. So they have to be treated the same as similarly situated individuals, and they are entitled to due process of law. So there has to be notice and opportunity to have a fair hearing and all of the things that individuals expect and are entitled to under the 14th Amendment. Basically, what in these cases the railroad companies argued was these state laws treated them less fairly than individuals. So similarly situated people. One, that Santa Clara County, in terms of taxing the fences that they had, their assets, and Minneapolis and St. Louis Railway versus Beckwith. It was about an Iowa statute that said if the railroad didn't have a fence closing off like where the railroad came through, and the train hit a farmer's pigs, the railroad company was liable for double the value of the pigs. And the railroad company said that was unfair because individuals were only liable for the value of the pig. And the companies won.
Yeah, they needed to build that many fences and they cannot be responsible for someone pigs running. Yeah, so okay.
Well, that's what I thought it was going to be about. It was actually about because they were responsible. It was their land. They didn't have a fence, even though the farmer should have had control of his pigs. But an individual person, if they hit the pig with their car, were responsible for just the value of the pig. The railroad company, if they hit the pig with their train, were responsible for double the value. And so they're saying that's unfair.
And they were definitely a lot of pigs that suffered.
Well, this was Iowa.
Even
Yes, a lot of pigs. Yeah. We have a lot of statutes about pigs in Iowa. Yes, we do. Okay. I will try not to get too into the weeds with the facts. I find case law so fascinating. And it was interesting that they both involved fences. Anyway, okay. So they have 14th Amendment rights, corporations. They also have Fourth Amendment rights. And actually, this makes that the question about criminal law really interesting because we often think about the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, Sixth, Seventh, Eighth as criminal procedure amendments. And so now we're in the 1900s, 1906, and the Supreme Court holds that corporations have a Fourth Amendment right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. So they have that criminal, but they have that right. Interestingly, the Supreme Court holds that corporations do not have a protection against self-incrimination. So the Fifth Amendment says that you cannot be compelled to testify against yourself. And the Supreme Court says, no, that doesn't apply here to the corporation. It actually applies individually to the CEO who himself committed a crime. But it doesn't apply to the corporation because the Fifth Amendment is an individual right, and this is a collection of individuals. A collection of individuals.
That is very interesting.
All right, and then we get, and I'm sorry that these got cut off a little bit. The most recent cases have all been about First Amendment free speech. And so this one, the First National Bank of Boston, Massachusetts wanted to pass a law that basically said the banks couldn't speak out against laws that Massachusetts was passing. And the Supreme Court says, no, that's not right. These banks need to be able to speak out about things that are going to affect how they do business, because they need to, this right to have the ability to attempt to influence the outcomes of elections is one of the primary rights that the First Amendment was intended to protect. So corporations have rights to equal protection, due process of the law, the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure, and the right to free speech to influence elections. And they have the right to corporate funding, has the right to engage in independent political broadcasts in order to try to influence elections. And so that one's from 2011, and that's one of the more recent ones, reaffirming corporations' rights to free speech. Yeah. There have been a couple more recent ones I didn't include here in the slides because they get a little bit astray into corporations and individuals' religious beliefs under the First Amendment. But the corporation individuals, they won in those cases as well. But they're not included here. You are free to look those up if you would like to do that. Look up wedding cakes, essentially. See, this is why I love case law. We get to talk about fences, we get to talk about pigs, and we get to talk about wedding cakes.
Wedding cakes.
Okay. Any questions about that real brief overview of some of the constitutional rights that corporations have?
No, not yet. I think we need to process this information to digest it because I think we've never discussed, at least in our classes, maybe we should have discussed to really we usually talk about legal entity.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a synonym, legal person, but
Mm-hmm.
to actually see that there are some personal rights, constitutional, as you
Mm-hmm.
said,
Mm-hmm.
that is very new thought for many people, I bet. So that is super interesting. Thank you very much for sharing this. Because
so when you talk about legal entities, like, so do you think it's just a difference in nomenclature, or do you think it's actually a difference in how we view and how we treat these
no,
corporations, these entities?
we thought it's just a synonym. So legal
Okay.
entity just sounds more formal, more beautiful, more
Mm-hmm.
French-like, so it's like
Mm-hmm.
more just formal English, and that's all. And if you just explain it to some lay person, we would say like legal personality, something that is separate from its owners, and that's all. So never.
Hmm.
But here the word person gets a totally new perspective
Hmm.
coming from these slides. Yeah. So,
Hmm.
and it would be interesting to see in Russia. So
Yeah.
whether we have anything like this. Hmm.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. I think I have I think this is actually fairly good timing. I have another question for you. Um, can you think of other rights that corporations should enjoy the same as natural persons?
Hmm. And I think probably we may again close the eye. I don't know whether we'll see. So we'll
There's
see.
lots there.
I always keep forgetting if we have the eye, do we see the answers right away or not? So let's see how it works.
Let's see.
Okay.
Let's see how it goes.
Yeah. So if we see the person who submitted, then it means that we'll just quickly close it.
Mhm.
So then at the end, we'll see like the cloud. And while we are waiting, there is a question.
Mhm.
Alexei, you are being very, very are in I cannot I don't want to use
Engaged?
in yes, thank you very much, engaged. I wanted to use the word provocative, but that's a bad word because there is a very provocative question and we can discuss it while we're waiting, or maybe
Mhm.
we'll discuss next time, or maybe it's a question to our participants. So
Mhm.
because it's totally new, what about AI? Can we treat it as a legal person? So
That is right. That is an excellent question. I would love to hear what the participants have to say. I
yeah.
think the technology is changing so fast that the legal frameworks haven't caught up yet, right?
Hmm.
Um, I will say, as like a researcher, right, and an academic who publishes articles, um, if journals allow the use of AI in some way, you have to acknowledge it, right? Like a person.
Hmm. Oh, you should like quote it, yes, or cite it, yes.
Or like
Hmm.
you have to, so when you submit an article to an academic journal and you have like three authors, you say author one did A, B, C, like, right? Like they did the research, they did the data analysis, they did the drafting. Person two did the revising. Think like you have to include AI if you used it in those sort of disclosures of the workload, if journals allow the use of AI. So I think maybe it's scary. I don't know, but moving towards personhood,
Hmm.
that's my initial response. I don't know. Any thoughts in the chat?
So we will ask, yes. So everyone, if you have got any thoughts, can you please submit them in our chat in Telegram following Alexei's question, which is, thank you, Alexei, great question.
Hmm.
So, and I think the answer is right now is in the air, or it is being are defined probably right
Yeah,
now, and as we see the world changing. Hmm.
absolutely. What a time to be alive, right?
It's scary sometimes. Oh, that's a lot. Hmm.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Yep. So corporations do have the obligation to pay taxes. Absolutely. They can be, they have, they can be sued and they can sue. The right to vote. That one I think is provocative. The right to vote.
Hmm.
Freedom of thought. Okay. Corporations should be able to pursue their own or like express their thoughts. Wow. Right. So you do think they should have the right against self-incrimination?
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a couple that's interesting. A couple do say voting rights. So that Citizens United case that I mentioned very briefly, um, some people argue that it because these corporations are now allowed unlimited media and money, and like as long as they're not explicitly connected to the candidate, they can pour unlimited money into the elections. And that's, I can't do that. I don't have unlimited money. So people argue it is their way of influencing the vote. Here's a question though. If corporations should have the right to vote, we have this concept, this idea of one person, one vote.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
Apple gets one
one
vote.
vote. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
And where, we didn't talk about this, I can touch on it briefly. Where does the corporation vote if they should get a vote?
mm-hmm.
Where they're incorporated. For most corporations, that's Delaware. We can talk about that. Or where they do most of their business, where their
Mm-hmm.
headquarters are. Where do they get to vote?
What kind of vote? Yeah. And we have a question. So
Mhm.
from Svetlana, which is very interesting. How do the rights of LLC as a legal person differ from the rights of corporation? If we
If they
can,
do. Yeah.
yeah, if they do, or if something is known, because that is very interesting question. So, and we do consider LLC to be a legal person.
Mhm.
So, but it is different from corporation. So,
Mhm.
can we even discuss LLC as having constitutional rights um, as a corporation? That's a very
Yeah.
interesting question.
That
But
that is a very interesting question. Um, and one, again, I can look into the answer. One of the reasons I didn't include the wedding cake um, First Amendment cases was because I thought they were both LLCs and not corporations, which might actually give us our answer that they do also have these legal personhood rights. Um, but I'm happy to look into that, and I think some of these things can be answered in a slide next time, and some of them might involve a little more depth.
and there is continuation of the discussion about our rights, voting rights. Alexei
Mhm.
says that no right to vote because individuals can set up as much entities as they want. So it would be
True. And of
a total.
course, they already have their own right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have
So
your personal right to vote and then you set up five entities, now you
you're
have six.
jeopardizing election, like the
Yeah.
whole point of it. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Okay. So, and we do have one more question. So, as I
Mhm.
understand, someone still is having some issues. The difference between LLC and corporation. If you can just explain it one more time, because to many people, as I understand, LLC and corporation were just like very synonym, like
Synonymous.
they was. Yes, thank you.
So,
Synonymous.
mhm,
Yeah. So, and now we mostly discuss corporations, and LLCs
mhm,
are
mhm.
not. Hmm.
Um, so I think there's a couple of big differences, right? So the LLC and the corporation, they share the limiting of liability for individuals, right? So they share that. But the way that money passes to stakeholders is different. So therefore, the way that you're taxed is different.
Hmm.
So in the corporation, the shareholders buy a share, like buying stock, right? And then they receive residual money back through dividends that's left over, like once everybody else has been paid what they're owed, right? So you're paid like a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
Um, in an LLC, it's more common just to have like the pass-through income, and then you pay the taxes on that income.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, and I think that goes back to structurally, they're different, right? The money people and the managing people in a corporation are different,
Hmm.
right? And it's intentionally set up that way um, to to really shield everybody from liability. Whereas in an LLC, you can have, say, you have like a family and they have, I don't know, a pet store or something, and you have seven people who have interest, like they can all have an interest share, invest money and capital into the building, into the business, and also manage and run it. They can be the same people. the investors and the managers.
Mhm.
Whereas in a corporation, the structure is intentionally more divided.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. And
Okay.
yes, thank you. No, that is very important because to many people, I think it was like one big like
Mhm.
type of thing, and it's very important to distinguish between it. And I have a suggestion while we're waiting for any questions that may
Mhm.
arise. Can you
Mhm.
please write in chat or maybe in comments to YouTube or Vkontakte? So any word that was the most memorable. I'm losing my English today. That was the most memorable for you are today. So it will be interesting to see
Mhm.
what while we are waiting because we have a little bit of time left, just like
Mhm.
source, basically
Yeah.
roughly 5 minutes. So you will have time, and I will browse if I have any
Okay.
questions. So please just write the most memorable word for you in any option that you can do. That will be very interesting to see. And let me see if you have got any questions. Oh, and we have some questions
I do.
from.
Yeah. I also,
Sorry.
if we want to do it,
Yeah,
we can return to the question we started with, or
yeah.
we
Mhm.
can do if you wanted to start your own business, what would you choose?
Oh, that is super. Yes, let's wait for the words, and we also give some time
Okay.
for our people to answer. Okay, so all right. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and everyone, we do have also a question, the last question. So, Lindsay, let's close
Yeah.
the eye.
Sorry. I always like
No,
when
no,
I
no.
see the eye, I think it
Yeah,
is hidden.
yeah, I know. To me, it was also like it is hidden, so it should be hidden. Okay.
Yeah.
So, we're waiting for your words and we're waiting for your answers. So,
Mhm.
let's wrap it up with. Uh-huh. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Thank you so much. So, and yeah, and the question we have right now. If you were going to start your own business, would you choose to make it a corporation or use a different business organization? That's from Lindsay. And also, we're waiting for your memorable word. So let me browse the comments also. Mhm. Just a moment. Tin, tin, tin. Yeah, so we need to give some time because of the
Mhm.
delay in casting.
Understood. Understood.
Always
Um,
give like.
and I know there have been some questions about the different business organizations, like the different options. I wasn't sure how interested people would be, but I'm glad you are interested. So Sophia, before I send you the final slides that you can upload with the link, I can add some more information about these different business organization options and what they actually look like in the US. So people who are interested would have more specific information about that.
Mhm. Super. Excellent. Yes, that would be, I think, great. So, так, Roman, no, I don't see the comments right now, but I will try to access them. So, just a moment. So, we have our technician. Сейчас я зайду, I will access them. So, because I'm trying to look at three different
I
options.
know.
So,
Well, while you're doing that, I do have 18 submissions on the question, so we can reveal that. Interesting. Okay, limited part under. I think unsure. I think that's fair because it depends on how complex the business is that you want to run. Um, LLC, I think absolutely a lot of people here in the US choose that because you get the flexibility of the partnership with some of the liability limitations of the corporation. I like that's personally like that's what my husband's business is. It's an LLC and a limited partnership, right? So the flexibility of the partnership, but shielding some of the partners from the liability. So it seems
mhm,
like limiting liability is important to our participants.
mhm. Super. Thank you so much. And we have some interesting words. So, Jana, personhood,
Mhm.
also Anna, personhood, Nikita, diffused group. I think that was an interesting thing to many, many people. And also our sweat equity. That was
Good.
something.
And it wasn't even on a slide. You got that just from listening. That's excellent.
Okay, personhood, and Elisa says that she has heard it for the first time ever.
Oh,
So,
wow.
corporate insider slash outsiders from Juliana. Natalia says constituency. So, Juliana writes collocations like to delegate tasks to shield from liability. And
Mhm.
Alexei says he has a comment about the task that the question that he asked is that we choose partnership because we're all lawyers.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And that is it, yeah, at least here in the States, they're partnerships, they're general partnerships, historically and today.
Yeah. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
everyone. That was so sweet to hear from you. And it's great that we have such active participants. Mhm.
Yeah, I thank you for being so active. It helps me know who I'm talking to, and what you're interested in, and how we can adapt for the next couple of webinars to be the most interesting and most useful for you. So the
Mhm.
next topic is webinar two. Oh, can I, is it, you gasped. Is that okay if I
Yes, yes, yes.
say?
Go ahead. Yes, I'm
Yeah.
so glad. Yes, yes, yes. Go ahead.
Webinar two will be in 2 weeks, same time. So that's 7:30 your time, and we'll be talking about the process of incorporating a company. So the documents, the wheres, the whys, the hows, and of course, we'll return to any questions that you raised this evening.
Yes. And please, if you have any more questions, please do write them. And thank you so much, Lindsay. So I understand fully that for the first time to get to a big live audience in this series, that is, we were honestly nervous, but we're very happy that it worked out. And thank you so much for your preparation, for doing so much research, for organizing it in such a great way, and for allowing us to give answers. That was fun. That was so much fun, and it is extremely precious to us to have an insight into a very complicated area of law of a foreign country, which is, of course, of great interest to us. And you are the source of information. That's why there are so many questions that we ask you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And yes, everyone, we are saying goodbye and see you in 2 weeks. You will receive next time, tomorrow, the presentation, the a link to the video, and also the video and the presentation will be uploaded to our website where you can always access it, rewatch it, and they will be available even after the series is over. And the last but not least, so we wanted to remind you that after having these 6 webinars, there will be an online test, and those of you who successfully complete it will be able to receive a certificate. So, which will be a nice award to you. Yeah. So, and thank you again, Lindsay, and yeah,
Thank you, Sophia.
thank you, and yeah, see you everyone. Bye bye. See you in 2 weeks. Bye, bye everyone.